My brother faked a medical emergency to steal my savings, so I exposed him publicly and reclaimed everything I had lost. I'm a 26-year-old guy who has always been labeled the responsible one, while my older brother was treated like the fragile favorite, even when his life looked like a trail of broken promises and reckless choices. From the time we were kids, my parents leaned on me like a permanent support beam, whispering, "You're the sensible one, you'll handle it," while shielding him with excuses every time he failed. Hearing my mother sigh, "He just needs more understanding," slowly taught me that my discipline wasn't praised, it was expected. Inside, I carried a quiet ache, the kind that grows when love feels conditional and approval feels transactional. I worked 2 part-time jobs through college, saved every spare rupee, and skipped nights out just to watch my savings account climb toward the dream of a small apartment and a life that finally felt like mine. The soft hum of my old fan at night became my comfort as I calculated budgets in the dim glow of my phone, whispering to myself, "Just a little longer, you're almost free." My brother, on the other hand, laughed at my routines, nudging me at family dinners and saying, "Relax for once, man, money isn't everything." I'd force a smile while something bitter settled in my chest. "Why are you always so uptight?" he'd mock, swirling his glass, his eyes flashing with a strange mix of arrogance and envy. My father would chuckle and add, "Let him be, he's just ambitious," as if my discipline was a joke and his chaos was charm. I swallowed that hurt over and over, convincing myself that being the strong one was my role, my burden, my purpose. Still, every time I passed his room and smelled the stale smoke and cheap cologne, I wondered why my effort felt invisible. By the time my savings finally reached a number that felt like hope, the tension between us had thickened into something unspoken and dangerous. I didn't realize then that this fragile balance was about to be shattered by a single desperate phone call that would change everything. The call came just after midnight, the kind of shrill ring that cuts straight through sleep and leaves your heart racing before you even say hello. My mother's voice cracked on the other end, trembling and breathless. "He collapsed," she sobbed. "Your brother, he's in bad shape. The doctors say we need money now, or they won't move forward." The room felt colder suddenly, the faint buzzing of the ceiling fan turning into a dull roar inside my ears as I sat up, clutching my phone like it could keep me steady. "Is he okay?" I asked, my voice tight, already picturing him pale and helpless on some sterile hospital bed. "We don't know," she whispered. "You're the only one who can help. Please, don't let him die because of money." Those words wrapped around my chest and squeezed, filling me with panic and guilt all at once. Every instinct told me something felt rushed, too dramatic, but fear drowned out logic. Within an hour, I was standing in the glow of an ATM screen, my fingers shaking as I transferred a huge portion of my savings. The cold night air stung my face, and the streetlights blurred as my mind replayed every memory of him, every argument, every sarcastic smile. Still, I whispered to myself, "It's family. This is what you're supposed to do." When I sent the confirmation to my parents, my father's reply was simple, "Good. You did the right thing." Later, my brother called, his voice weak and breathy, almost theatrical. "I owe you my life," he murmured. "I swear, I'll pay you back. I just need time." A strange unease crept over me, like something sour hiding beneath the words, but I ignored it, telling myself I was just overwhelmed. As dawn light crept through my window, painting pale lines across the floor, I lay there staring at the ceiling, my balance drained, my future shaken, whispering into the silence, "Please let him be okay." Yet somewhere deep inside, a small voice refused to quiet, and the first sliver of doubt began to take root. The days passed in a strange fog, but the more I tried to hold on to relief, the more the story started to feel off. Whenever I asked my parents which hospital he was in, their answers shifted like sand. They moved him for better care, my mother insisted, her voice too quick, too rehearsed. "He's stable now, stop overthinking," my father snapped, as if my concern was an inconvenience instead of fear. I texted my brother, asking for updates, photos, anything that could reassure me. Hours would pass before he replied with vague excuses. "They won't let me use my phone much," he claimed, yet his social status went mysteriously silent after years of constant posting. The absence felt loud, like someone had muted a truth I wasn't supposed to hear. Inside, anxiety twisted into a restless knot that refused to settle. One evening, I overheard my parents whispering in the kitchen, their voices low and tense. "Just keep him calm for now," my mother murmured. "He doesn't need the stress." My heart pounded as I stood outside the doorway, the smell of fried onions thick in the air, feeling like an outsider in my own home. When I stepped in, they froze, my father quickly saying, "We're talking about your brother's recovery. Don't interrogate us." "But where exactly is he?" I pressed, my voice shaking. "I just want to visit." My mother avoided my eyes. "He's not ready for visitors," she replied sharply. "Stop making this about you." Those words hit like a slap, filling me with a blend of shame and suspicion that made my stomach churn. Late at night, I replayed everything in my head: the rushed call, the urgency, the strange deflection. The soft glow of my phone illuminated my face as I scrolled through hospital directories, trying to find his name among patient listings, but every search came up empty. "You're being paranoid," I muttered to myself, yet the silence roared louder than reassurance. As doubt bloomed into something darker, a chilling realization whispered at the edges of my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a truth far more devastating than I was ready to face. I couldn't live with the uncertainty anymore, so I did something I'd never dared to do before. I stopped trusting their words and started looking for the truth myself. The next morning, I told my parents I was stepping out for groceries, but instead, I walked straight into the city hospital they had vaguely mentioned days ago, my pulse hammering with every step. The sterile smell of disinfectant burned my nose as I approached the reception desk, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I'm here to check on my brother," I said quietly. "He was admitted a few nights ago." The nurse typed his name, frowned, then typed again. "Sir," she said gently, "we have no record of him here." A cold shock ran through my spine. "That's impossible," I insisted, my voice cracking. "He had a medical emergency." She shook her head, sympathy flickering in her eyes. "I'm sorry, but no one by that name has been treated or transferred." I walked out feeling dizzy, the world suddenly louder and sharper, like someone had pulled back a curtain I wasn't ready to see behind. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and called a friend who worked in healthcare, begging him to check other nearby hospitals. An hour later, his message arrived: no admission. No ER visit. Nothing. That's when the truth slammed into me like a physical blow. He wasn't sick. He never collapsed. There was no emergency. The late-night panic, the tears, the guilt, all of it had been a performance. My brother had taken my money and vanished behind a lie so bold it made my stomach turn. I drove past one of his usual hangouts later that evening, and through the dim glow of a cafe window, I saw him laughing, scrolling through his phone, perfectly fine. The smell of coffee and cigarette smoke filled my car as I stared at him, my chest burning with disbelief and rage. "So this is what my savings paid for?" I whispered, watching him clink glasses with his friends, unaware that I had finally seen through the illusion. And as I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, I realized this wasn't just a betrayal, it was the beginning of something much darker waiting to unfold. I'm a 26-year-old guy who thought discovering my brother's fake emergency was the worst betrayal imaginable, until I decided to confront my parents and watched their faces crumble in a way that haunted me. The living room felt heavier than usual, the curtains half-drawn and the air thick with the sour smell of old tea as I stood there clutching my phone. "You knew, didn't you?" I asked, my voice trembling despite the anger buzzing through my veins. My mother's eyes fluttered shut, and my father looked away like a man caught red-handed. "What are you talking about?" my father muttered weakly, but his tone didn't carry conviction. I stepped closer, my chest burning. "You knew he wasn't sick. You still made me give him my savings." Silence flooded the space, stretched thin and suffocating, until my mother whispered, "We just didn't want things to get out of control." The words sliced through me sharper than any insult. "So you let him fake a medical emergency and rob me?" I snapped, my voice echoing off the peeling walls. "He's your brother," she murmured, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He's struggling. We thought you'd be strong enough to handle it." That sentence shattered something deep inside me, a realization so painful it left me breathless. Strong enough to be sacrificed. Strong enough to be used. My father tried to justify it, saying, he promised he'd return it, we just needed time, but I could hear the fear behind his voice, the desperate attempt to control the fallout. I felt heat rise behind my eyes, but this wasn't just rage anymore, it was clarity. Every memory of family dinners, every forced smile, every time they'd defended him played back differently now, soaked in deliberate betrayal. "You didn't protect him," I whispered, my voice hollow and sharp. "You chose him." The room spun slightly, the faint ticking of the clock sounding louder than my heartbeat as I stepped away from them. My phone vibrated in my hand just then. A message from my brother flashed onto the screen, and the smug words inside made my blood run colder than the night air outside. I'm a 26-year-old guy who thought I could stay strong, but after that message from him, something inside me finally started to unravel. "Relax, hero." "Money well spent," he'd written, followed by a laughing emoji, like my savings were just another joke to him. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, the room around me feeling distant and unreal, as if the ground beneath my life had quietly dissolved. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay on my bed listening to the slow drip of the bathroom tap and the soft creak of the old ceiling fan, my mind replaying every lie, every forced smile, every moment I'd chosen trust over instinct. My chest felt tight, breaths shallow, and a strange ache settled behind my eyes. "Why would you do this to me?" I muttered into the darkness, but the silence only answered back. The next morning, he walked past me in the hallway, perfectly fine, whistling as if nothing had happened. "You look rough," he smirked under his breath. "Guess being the family bank is stressful, huh?" My hands clenched into fists, nails biting into my palms as heat surged through my veins. "You stole my future," I whispered, my voice cracking. He shrugged, completely unbothered. "Don't be so dramatic. You'll earn it again." Hearing my parents defend him again felt like a second betrayal. "Stop provoking him," my mother hissed at me. "He's already under enough pressure." I stared at her in disbelief, a lump forming in my throat. "What about me?" I wanted to scream, but the words died before they reached my lips. Instead, a crushing wave of exhaustion swept over me, heavy and suffocating. Days blurred together as I drifted through work and home like a ghost, losing appetite, losing sleep, losing pieces of myself I didn't even know how to replace. Each passing hour felt like proof that I meant nothing in a family that only saw me as a resource. And as the numbness wrapped tighter around my heart, a dangerous thought began to whisper through the cracks of my despair: maybe silence wasn't my only option anymore. I'm a 26-year-old guy who finally realized that staying quiet was only feeding the disrespect, and something inside me began to harden into cold, deliberate focus. The numbness didn't vanish, but it sharpened, turning my pain into a restless need for control. One night, as the house slept and the curtains swayed gently in the stale breeze, I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. Every bank transfer. Every message. Every mocking word he'd sent flashing across my screen like proof of war. "You really thought you could just walk away from this?" I muttered, scrolling through his smug texts, the glow painting my tired face blue. I began recording conversations on my phone, pretending to be calm while my heart hammered with restrained fury. "Bro, you'll pay me back, right?" I asked once, letting my voice sound casual. He laughed. "Relax, man. You earn plenty. Stop acting broke." The way he said it so easily burned deeper than any insult. I collected timestamps, photos of his extravagant nights out, receipts from places my money clearly funded. The smell of cold coffee lingered around me as I sat hunched over my desk, eyes stinging from exhaustion yet wide with quiet resolve. With every piece of evidence, the victim inside me faded, replaced by someone calculating, someone watching instead of bleeding. My parents noticed the shift. "Why are you so distant lately?" my mother asked, standing in the doorway. "Just tired," I replied, forcing a neutral tone, my jaw tight with things I wasn't ready to say yet. In truth, I was building something they couldn't see, a truth they'd soon be unable to escape. Late one evening, I overheard my brother on the phone in the living room, his voice careless and loud. "He won't do anything," he scoffed. "He's always been soft." My chest tightened as rage coiled inside me, no longer chaotic but precise. I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the screen as an idea began to form, bold, risky, and irreversible. And as a family gathering invite arrived in the group chat, a slow, dangerous smile crept across my face. I'm a 26-year-old guy who thought I had reached my limit, but the real breaking point came when my own family turned my pain into an inconvenience. The night before the gathering, I overheard my parents arguing in the kitchen, their voices sharp and bitter. "He's tearing this family apart," my father snapped, and my mother whispered, "He just won't let it go." Standing in the hallway, the faint smell of burnt rice hanging in the air, I felt like the ground dropped out from under my feet. I stepped in, unable to stay silent anymore. "I'm not the one who lied," I said, my voice shaking. "He stole from me. You helped him." My mother turned on me, eyes blazing with frustration. "Why can't you just forgive him? He's your brother," she cried. "Because he ruined me," I shot back, chest tight, heart pounding like it wanted to escape my ribs. My brother leaned against the counter, arms crossed, a lazy smirk twisting his lips. "Look at you," he scoffed. "Acting like a victim over some money." The words sliced through me, and something dark swelled in my chest. "You took everything I worked for," I whispered. "You took my future." He rolled his eyes. "You'll survive. You always do. That's kind of your thing, isn't it?" I felt stripped bare, exposed in a house that no longer felt like home. The familiar flicker of the ceiling light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across their faces as they closed ranks against me. My father pointed a stern finger. "You're being selfish. You're destroying the peace in this house." In that moment, a hollow silence swallowed me whole. I realized I wasn't seen as a son, or a brother, just a problem to be managed. My chest ached, throat burning as tears threatened but refused to fall. I retreated to my room, the door creaking shut behind me, and sank onto the floor, staring at the cracked paint on the wall. Is this really my family? As my phone vibrated with a new message from the group chat, and the words "tomorrow. Be there" glowed softly on the screen, I knew I was standing at the edge of something that would change everything forever. I'm a 26-year-old guy who walked into that family gathering feeling like every step was heavier than the last, but my resolve was sharper than the fear twisting in my stomach. The living room buzzed with forced laughter and the clinking of teacups, the familiar scent of spiced snacks hanging thick in the air. Relatives smiled at me, oblivious, while my brother lounged comfortably on the sofa, legs crossed, acting like the prince who'd never done wrong. "Everyone's here," my aunt announced cheerfully, and that was my cue. My heart hammered as I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the chatter like glass. "I need to say something," I began, and the room fell into an uneasy hush. My brother smirked. "Here we go," he muttered, loud enough for a few to hear. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling but steady enough to press play. His voice filled the room, laughing as he joked about spending my money. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother's face drained of color, my father's jaw tightening in silent panic. "You said you were dying," I said, staring straight at him. "You told them to make me believe it." "That's not what it sounds like," he snapped, suddenly sitting forward. "You're twisting things." I swiped to the next recording, his mocking tone echoing again, "Relax, hero. Money well spent." The words landed like a slap across the entire room. "Is this true?" an uncle demanded, looking at my parents. They avoided his gaze, their silence louder than any confession. "You knew," a cousin whispered, eyes wide. I watched as the narrative shifted, disbelief mixing with anger, the family finally seeing what I'd lived through alone. My brother jumped up, pointing at me. "He's exaggerating. He's always been dramatic." But his voice shook now, the confidence cracking under the weight of the truth. I felt tears sting my eyes, not from weakness, but from the overwhelming release of being heard at last. As the room exploded into heated questions and stunned whispers, I lowered my phone, my chest rising with shaky breaths. Yet even as the truth surfaced, I sensed his glare burning into me, and I knew this moment was only the start of a far more dangerous turning point. I'm a 26-year-old guy who felt the air change the moment the truth settled over the room, like a storm finally breaking after days of suffocating pressure. Voices layered over each other, sharp and stunned, as relatives turned toward my brother with expressions I'd never seen before: disbelief, anger, disgust. "How could you do this?" my aunt demanded, her voice trembling. "A fake medical emergency? Over money?" My brother backed away slightly, his bravado unraveling in real time. "You're all overreacting," he insisted, but the confidence that once dripped from every word now sounded thin, almost desperate. I stepped forward, my voice low but steady. No. This is what reality sounds like when you stop protecting him, I said, glancing at my parents before looking back at him. For the first time in my life, eyes weren't pitying me, they were respecting me. My uncle shook his head slowly. You owe him everything you took, he said firmly. Every rupee. My parents tried to intervene. Let's not make this worse, my mother pleaded, but the room no longer belonged to her narrative. You already did, a cousin snapped back. I could feel my heart pounding, but there was clarity in it now, a strange calm beneath the chaos. I'm not letting this go, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I will get every cent back, whether you like it or not. His eyes flashed with panic as he muttered, You're ruining my life, and I almost laughed at the irony. The chatter grew louder, people whispering about consequences, about police, about lawyers. My brother's face tightened, jaw clenched, hands balled into fists as his world shrank around him. He looked at me like I was the enemy, like I'd betrayed him, and something in that look unsettled me. As accusations flew and my parents scrambled to regain control, I caught his gaze one last time, and in his eyes, I saw something darker than anger. Something cold. And I knew the fallout was far from over. I'm a 26-year-old guy who thought exposing him would be the hardest part, but watching the consequences finally close in on him felt like standing in the aftermath of a storm I'd spent months trapped inside. The days that followed the gathering were tense and suffocating, every phone call filled with whispered arguments and frantic attempts to smooth things over. My parents knocked on my door late one night, the hallway light casting tired shadows across their faces. Let's handle this quietly, my father pleaded. No need to involve lawyers. He'll return it slowly. I stared at him, heart heavy but unyielding. You said the same thing when he faked being sick, I replied coldly. Quiet is how you helped him steal from me. My mother's eyes shimmered with regret. We were just trying to keep the peace, she murmured. Peace for who? I snapped. Because it was never for me. The next day, I sat in a small legal office, the air smelling faintly of old paper and floor cleaner, as I laid out every detail to a lawyer. Bank statements, voice recordings, screenshots, each piece felt like carving truth into stone. This is clear financial fraud, he said calmly, and for the first time in weeks, something inside me steadied. When my brother found out I'd filed a case, he stormed into the house, eyes wild with fury. You really gonna drag me through court? He shouted. After everything we've been through? I met his gaze without flinching. After everything you put me through, I said quietly. Yes. He scoffed, but the fear behind his eyes told another story. My parents hovered nervously, torn between guilt and instinct, but I no longer cared which side they chose. I felt oddly detached, like I'd stepped outside the cycle that had always swallowed me whole. As legal notices were sent and whispers of repayment plans began circulating, my phone buzzed again, this time with a soft, hollow apology from him. I didn't mean to hurt you like this. I stared at the words, unsure whether to believe them, knowing one final emotional battle still waited ahead. I'm a 26-year-old guy who never imagined that the quiet after chaos could feel this strange, like the air had finally settled but my lungs were still learning how to breathe again. The apology sat on my screen for hours, those hollow words staring back at me, and for the first time, I didn't rush to respond. I closed my eyes instead, listening to the soft hum of traffic outside my window and the faint rustle of leaves against the glass, realizing how peaceful silence could be when it wasn't built on lies. You don't have to answer him, my lawyer said gently over the phone. Healing doesn't require forgiveness. That sentence lingered inside me, warm and unfamiliar, like permission I'd never been given before. My parents tried once more to bridge the gap, sitting stiffly at the dining table, my mother whispering, We're sorry we failed you. I looked at them, not with rage, but with a sadness so deep it surprised me. I needed protection, I said quietly. Not sacrifice. Weeks passed, and the legal process forced my brother to return what he could, each installment feeling less like revenge and more like closure. The first time he handed me cash without sarcasm or arrogance, his shoulders slumped, eyes hollow, I felt something shift. Not sympathy, just release. He wasn't my problem anymore. I started moving toward the life I'd once only imagined, placing my deposit for a small apartment that smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Standing in the empty living room, sunlight spilling across the bare floor, I whispered, "This is mine," and for the first time, it felt true. No guilt. No obligation. Just choice. One evening, as I unpacked boxes in the quiet, my phone buzzed again. Another message from him, longer this time, heavier. I didn't open it. Instead, I set the phone face down and walked to the window, watching the city lights flicker alive as something peaceful settled over my chest. Because I finally understood something simple and powerful, I wasn't the responsible one anymore. I was just free. And as the night wrapped softly around my new beginning, I wondered if he would ever realize what he lost wasn't just my money, but my brotherhood.